I'm Dr. Phil, and you're watching Behind the Brand.
Hi, I'm Bryan Elliott. Welcome to another edition of Behind the Brand. Today I'm here live on Dr. Phil's set with Dr. Phil. Welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
I usually ask my guests, how'd you get this job?
Well, I got this job by being, I guess, pretty involved in the litigation arena. I did not plan ever to be involved in television. And I guess really who does? Is there ever a kid sitting in a sandbox somewhere saying, I want to grow up and do a talk show someday? I mean, maybe there is in this day and time where we're kind of a more media aware generation, but it certainly wasn't in my game plan growing up. But I was in the litigation arena, and we represented a lot of media companies, and among those was Oprah and Harpo Productions, and I worked with Oprah for a couple of years leading up to a trial that took place in Amarillo, Texas, known as the Mad Cow case, where she was sued by the cattle growers. And she kind of had a philosophy. She said, I've got a commitment to my viewers that anything I find, whatever it might be, a book, a person, a product, or whatever that I think has really had a profound effect on me, I share with my viewers. And she said, you really fall into that category, and I want to share you with my viewers, so I want you to be on my television show.
Yeah, I think there's a term for that. I think it's called the Oprah effect.
Yeah, there's definitely the O factor. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. So do you credit her with kind of giving you a big break, transitioning from your professional career to TV, or?
No, I wouldn't say that she kind of gave me a big break. I would say she invented Dr. Phil. I mean, because there was I had no vision of being on television. I had no aspirations of being on television. This was totally her vision, her creation, her idea, and her launch.
Did she have to convince you this was a good idea, or did you see it?
Well, yes, she did have to convince me. Their producers called after the trial and said, we want you to come do a show. And I said, not really. I think I'll pass. But I can give you the name of some people I think are really good. And then pretty soon, she called back and said, you don't say no when Oprah called. We were really good friends by that time.
Yeah.
I said, I'm going scuba diving. I can't do it. She said, we'll wait till you get back, okay?
Okay.
And so I got back and went to do a show, and it just really turned out to make a lot of noise, get a lot of attention, because I think it was a different voice. I kind of don't sugarcoat things, and I think that was really a different thing, at least for that day and time.
Yeah, give us some context. Like, what year was this? What are we talking about?
Oh gosh, I think we started here in '02, and I was on there for 5 years, so late '90s, yeah.
Okay, so internet's just a baby. YouTube hasn't launched yet.
Right.
We're talking about traditional TV.
Right.
Let's flash forward until now, and let's kind of do a little bit of retrospect, thinking, reflecting back on sort of where you've been and where you are now. You've got a lot of stuff going on. You're a best-selling author. You've got your hands in technology. You've got an app and different things. You've got new shows in development. I want to know, a lot of people watch this show. They're entrepreneurs, they're creators, a lot of people on YouTube, in fact, and that's been a platform that's just exploded. And Facebook is not far behind with becoming a very viable platform for everyone. It's leveled the playing field and done a lot. Talk to me about how you're building audiences, and more specifically, I want to know, what are you doing differently from sort of medium to medium, right? So books are different than TV, they're different than technology. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think the main thing for me and for us is really paying attention to your audience. We have to really pay attention to our audience in terms of content and what they're interested in focusing on, and also in the way they're getting their information.
How are you paying attention?
Well, we don't stop cars out on Sunset and Melrose and say, hey, I think you need some help, come in here.
Mm-hmm.
We help people that write to us, and we get tens of, you just can't imagine. I
Yeah.
mean, we get so many emails and
Yeah.
letters.
Well, and you're eliciting, right? You're
And we
asking
pay
people.
attention to what people are writing us about, what they're interested in, and based on what categories people are focused on, whether it's depression, alcoholism, parenting, entrepreneurship, their own self-worth, just the different things that are their topics, what's on their priority list, then that informs what we do content-wise. And then you have to pay attention to how they're getting their information.
Right.
I mean, are they, 10 years ago, people were totally willing to do what we call a lean back experience, where they would just lean back and passively take whatever you were serving up for an hour. But now you have people that are much more of a lean in experience where they're wanting to interact with the content. They're wanting to pick and choose what they focus on. They want a snippet here, they want a piece of information here, they want to cherry pick what's relevant to them at that particular point in time.
Yeah.
And if you want to be successful, you've got to change with the times. You've got to meet people where they are instead of expecting them to meet you where you are. That's the big key.
How have you done that then?
Well, I think we pay attention and then say, all right, what can we do to deliver what we have to deliver in a more efficient and impactful way? And those are two different things, efficient and impactful. For example, with Doctor on Demand, we know that healthcare cost is through the roof. We know that we're in a 78% double income society right now. So people don't have time to go to the doctor. They don't have time to take their children to the doctor. And we've seen, we've become a head down society because everybody's looking at their smartphones, right? When was the last time you went to the library and looked something up?
Yeah.
It doesn't happen anymore. You can Google it. You can go to a search engine. You can find it. So you don't see a lot of buggy whips around anymore because you don't see a lot of horse and buggies around anymore. So that becomes obsolete, and new technology takes over. And when you see it happening in one area, you can predict that it's going to happen in another. So with Doctor on Demand, for example, we said, okay, can we deliver this medical service in a quality and effective way and eliminate an average of 21-day waiting period? Can we eliminate them having to take a half day off work to go sit in a crowded waiting room where if they're not sick, they will be after they sit in a room full of sick people?
Yeah.
And can we get rid of those things and come up with a technology that fits what they're using, and now they can be face-to-face on their smartphone, iPad, or desktop with a board-certified physician in an average wait time of about 2.5 minutes. They can write prescriptions. They can be the referral source for a specialist. So is it more efficient? Yes. Is it impactful? Yes, because it saves time. And so next thing we know, we've got 45 million lives enrolled here, and a lot of our employers are paying for it 100% because they're saying, my gosh, you're saving me all this lost time.
Yeah.
So it's a disruptive force in medicine. So that's what I mean when I say we're looking for better ways to do what people are already doing.
I think what you said was maybe subtle, and I just want to underscore the brilliance behind that. I mean, it sounds like everything and nothing has changed at the same time. It's really back to small town, personal experience, except technology, how you're leveraging technology is you're making it scale, right? You're 45 million people. That's a whole lot bigger than a small little town, but you're still giving them that personal experience. And so, people who've got companies, they can look at what you're doing as a model, and I think learn a ton.
Yeah, it's probably become the biggest medical practice in America, probably in the history of America.
That's pretty cool.
And 87% of what people present themselves in the hospital for doesn't result in hospitalizations. It means it can be handled in this fashion. So if you just look at what people are struggling with and you put yourself in their shoes, then you can say, okay, what can I do to meet that need? And so it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, it's classic looking at the problem and not coming up with an idea first and then trying to find a market for it. I think it's really smart. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about entrepreneurs. It's a very popular term. It's kind of buzzy, and it's popular to be an entrepreneur right now, even though not everyone's got the chops for it. Do you consider yourself an entrepreneur?
I do.
And so, do you think entrepreneurs are born, or is it something that we can learn?
Well, I spent a lot of time in the legal profession, and you can say a lawyer's a lawyer's a lawyer. That's not true. There's a difference between a defense lawyer and a plaintiff's lawyer, for example. Defense lawyers get paid by the hour. They get regular money coming in. A plaintiff's lawyer might go a year or two and not make a dime, and then get a big paycheck. And that's not for everybody.
Right.
I mean, that's a riverboat gambler. You got to be prepared to make sacrifices and have delayed gratification and get a whole lot later instead of a little bit along the way. And I'm not saying one's better than the other, but there's a different temperament. There's a different mentality.
And what is that mentality? Like
And the mentality is, first is, do you have the wherewithal to do it? Are you willing to make the sacrifices to forego immediate gratification for delayed gratification? And do you have the wherewithal to do that? Because you got to keep the wolf from the door.
Yeah.
While you're delaying that gratification. I mean, it sounds like high moral ground, but you got to have the wherewithal to do that. Because you're betting your rent money, you still got to pay the rent.
Well, yeah, and if you're married and you've got to answer
That's
to
what I mean.
friends and family who are saying, hey,
you still got to buy school shoes, and that's what I mean. It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
And so, I'm not someone that makes really aggressive investments on anything other than our own businesses. I'm not going to go take a flyer on a wildcat drilling program where you throw a rock in a field and spend $1 million doing a deep well. But I will spend that $1 million investing on something where I know if it's elbow grease and thinking and commitment that I control, then I am willing to do that. I am willing to forego a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 before something comes to fruition, as long as I'm the one that I'm betting on.
And so, do you think you were born inherently with those traits, that DNA?
No, I think it's a matter of being brought up poor.
Okay.
When you're poor, you have a different mindset, because I can always tell if somebody's been sort of poor or they've been really poor. Poor people say, if you don't work, you don't eat. If you've really been poor, I can tell somebody's really been really poor. They'll say, if you don't work and get paid today, you don't eat today. And I've been poor where I need to work today and get paid today, or I don't eat today.
Right.
And I think when you're in that situation, you're very results oriented.
Yeah.
And when you're very results oriented, then intentions don't matter as much as outcome. And
Right,
when you're results oriented, it's like in sports. I grew up in sports as well. What they care is not what you intended to do. They care how fast you run, how high you can jump, whether you can catch a ball and hang on to it. They don't care if you intended to. They want to talk to the people who did.
Well, and it's what have you done for me lately, too. You can't
Exactly.
bank all that stuff.
Yeah, you cannot bank it. It's what can you do for me today.
Yeah.
And so, I kind of grew up in, I ate yesterday because I worked yesterday, but am I going to get up? I can remember I had a paper route when I was real young in Oklahoma City, and it was just sleeting and wind was howling, and it was just horrible outside. You just not fit for man or beast. And I was getting dressed to go out, and my mother said, "You're not going out. Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to collect for the paper." Because back then, you'd go knock.
I remember, yeah.
I need $3.15 for the paper. Yeah. So you're not going out. I said, "Yes, I am." So why are you going out in this weather? Because tonight everybody's home. This is a great night to collect because everybody would be home. Nobody would be away from home. This was the perfect night to collect. That's what you do. You find those opportunities where you have a target-rich environment and you seize that moment. I learned that when I was in the 7th grade.
Yeah, that's called hustle.
That's right. You learn that early on.
So is it easier now that you've had some success, or do you think it was easier back then when you had a shorter distance to fall to start something new?
I think the stakes are just bigger, but the fall is still a long way. I mean, back then, you didn't get paid that day. The consequences were pretty big. You were very, very hungry. Today, something misses, the consequences are really high. I mean, the pain is the same. And, I don't, I have to tell you, day to day, I don't feel a lot different now than I did back then.
Yeah, I was curious about that. Like,
to me, as long as I got a good pair of tennis shoes, the strings in my tennis racket are good and tight, I got some balls I can bounce around, and a car that runs pretty good, I'm pretty happy. I don't have 10 homes around the world. I don't have a yacht floating in the harbor. I just, I have a nice home, and I live a comfortable life, don't get me wrong, but I can do poor, so I don't fear it.
so do you think that's what you would kind of credit to your success, is staying grounded and focused on the right things?
I think so, and I think the same thing is true with, we have 2 boys, and I think we've really taught them a really good work ethic, and I think they're both hard workers and both very successful.
What kind of advice do you give your kids about, whether or not to go into this business or just work in general? And maybe as you're thinking about that answer, think about this broader audience too, as maybe imparting some words of wisdom.
Somebody was interviewing my oldest son, Jay, not long ago, and they said, "What's the best piece of advice your dad ever gave you?" And I really liked his answer, because he said, it's not one piece of advice. What he taught me was, you work the problem. Whatever it is, you work the problem. You just grab a hold of it, and you just work the problem. And if it's damage control, you control the damage. If it's seize the moment, you seize the moment. You work the problem. You just get in there, and you work and find solutions. And he said, that's what I've seen him do, and that's what I've learned the most. And I think that's the thing. Look, you just can't mail it in and expect to be successful. You've got to get in there and roll your sleeves up and be involved at every level. And if you do that, and you know what somebody does, I don't see everything that goes on the Dr. Phil show. And I've told my staff many times, I'm not here in the middle of the night when you're editing these tapes, but because I don't see that, don't think I am not aware that you're down there at 3 a.m. editing those tapes, because when they roll into those monitors during the show, I don't think they got there by pixie dust. I know somebody's working really hard on those things. You have to understand all the pieces of the puzzle that go into it, and I think I'm pretty good at that.
So talking about puzzle pieces, we were talking about family a little bit. You have an anniversary coming up this year, right? Is this your 40th?
It'll be my 40th
That's
anniversary.
amazing.
Yeah, that's a big one, huh?
That is a big one.
I need to start thinking about that. I'm glad you brought that up. This takes some planning at 40. You don't want to mess that one up.
I'll send you a text or something. When we get
Please
closer.
do.
Yeah, it's in August, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
August.
Talk to us about your relationship with your wife and how that dynamic has changed or not changed over time with success or lack of, or.
It does change over time, because I'm not married to the same woman I married. She's changed and evolved. She's not married to the same guy. We both change and evolve.
Well, she's got a successful business too.
Oh, yes, she does. Her business is blowing up. In fact, she just doubled her footage in her office building. She's expanding so fast, she had to double what she's doing over there. And she is a great mother, great grandmother. And we just get along terrifically, and we always have. We give each other space, but yet we really value time when we come together. We're both very busy, and we'll be off, and we finally get together at the end of the day. It's like a breath of fresh air,
So, introvert, extrovert, that kind of thing. So are you guys evenly paired, or is it like opposites attract? Or?
She's much more extroverted than I am.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I'm very shy.
Okay.
Actually, and we're both homebodies, though, which works out great, because we value our privacy, we value being at home. We're fortunate in that both of our boys live in town. For the most part, one of them's a touring musician, so he's on the road a lot, very successful at that, so he's gone a lot, but he's been in studio working on an album lately, so it's great to have him here. But it's nice to have both boys in the same town where we can see them.
Let's talk about the F word, fear. I think it's something that gets a lot of people stuck. Can you share with us maybe some advice, places in your time in your career where you've been stuck, or maybe you've felt like you've failed, another F word, And I ask that, because hindsight's 20/20 most of the time, right? Like we learn from our mistakes. And I know a lot of people who watch this are maybe hedging. They don't want to take that risk. They're not comfortable with being uncomfortable yet. And so it's a constant state of, thinking about it instead of taking action.
I think it depends on how you measure your self-worth, and I think that's really the key to the whole thing. If you're a person that is going to give your power away to the point that how you feel about yourself is a function of how a deal turns out, or how well a book sells, or your bicycle shop does, or your business, whatever it is, turns out, you are going to live in fear because you don't always control that. No matter how good your idea is, no matter how hard you work, sometimes it's just a matter of timing, sometimes it's a matter of luck. Frankly, I mean, nobody wants to hear that, but sometimes it's a matter of being in the right place at the right time. If you're really solid in knowing who you are, and you don't determine that by external factors, then you can afford to take some risk. And I'm one of those people that I get my paper graded every day. National ratings, 7 o'clock every morning, they're published, so everybody in the world can see how did he do. It's great being number one. If you're going to be a number, that's a great place to be. But somebody's grading your paper every day, and if you're not up for that, then you need to really question what you're doing. That's why most people have a job instead of create jobs, because, and I'm in a personality-driven business, so when something goes wrong, it isn't the Acme company earnings are down for the quarter, it's Dr. Phil, the headline. It doesn't matter. Somebody can trip and fall in the studio. It isn't somebody fell at Paramount. It's Dr. Phil guest falls. I mean, they always lead with that. And so if you're not thick-skinned, then you are going to live in fear. And you don't want to be callous and not care, but at the same time, you've got to decide up front. It comes with the territory, and you've got to decide that up front. If you're a person that has the need to be loved by strangers, you're in for a rough ride, because it's never a success-only journey.
We've been spending a little time with Dr. Phil. Thanks so much for being on the show.
I appreciate it.